Jewish Education in Media is pleased to present L'Chaim, a program that highlights the people, issues, and events of importance to the Jewish community. Now here is your host, Rabbi Mark Golub.
I'm Mark Golub, and there are many amazing men and women helping to sustain Jewish life today. A relatively few are well known. Others are less well known. On this edition of L'Chaim, I am honored to be sitting with a woman whom we all should know, for she's doing wonderful work in the Jewish community with a range of interests and expertise that is truly remarkable. She is Cindy Grosz, a columnist, author, educator, and pro-Israel activist whose writings on Jewish topics of interest have appeared in Israel National News and the Times of Israel. In addition to her work in the Jewish world, Cindy is a marketing specialist in food, fashion, blogging. And Cindy Grosz is no stranger to the world of politics. Cindy is co-author of bipartisan legislation on education with New York Assemblyman Brian Curran and Dov Hikind. And she's a member of the National Diversity Coalition for Trump and is New York State Director for Women for Trump. And in 2018, Cindy was the recipient of the National Council of Young Israel Woman of the Year Award. It is so wonderful to have you sitting at this table. Thank you, Cindy, very, very much.
I'm honored to be here.
So I want to know first a little bit about you. Incidentally, you wear a lovely pendant. I think it's with the Shema on it, yes?
Yes, and there's a great story to this.
Tell me the story.
As you mentioned, I do fashion blogging,
Yes.
and not only that, fashion marketing. And I particularly love to work with Jewish and Israeli designers. And I recently became acquainted with the woman who designed this, Ora Shema, of Shema Or Jewelry. She is the designer, and she started this as a mitzvah project. She saw in the newspaper an IDF soldier who lost both his legs. And she is an Israeli-American who now lives in the States and was going to Israel. And originally she wanted to give him money to do something. He was a musician. And to make a long story short, she said she wanted to do more than that, than just give money. She wanted something meaningful, and that's something she could do. She said she's very fortunate in her life. She has a wonderful family, friends, and she decided to make the Shema. And from one pendant, it became a whole line of jewelry. It's on my ring also. And she gives a lot of money to major Jewish organizations from the profits of the jewelry. Those are the kind of stories I look for to write and to promote.
A lovely story, by the way. This is lovely. So, who are you? Where did you grow up, Cindy?
I grew up on Long Island.
Yes.
And my rabbi growing up was the ambassador's father. And I could actually... Named Rabbi Morris Friedman, our ambassador David Friedman.
Our current U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, his father was your rabbi.
Correct. And I could honestly say that I know David longer than the president. And the president knows him 30 years. And that's huge for him, but mine is bigger. I know him 50 years.
So when you were growing up, siblings?
Yes, I have two brothers, and I came from a very traditional conservative home.
Interesting.
A conservative Judaism that really isn't no longer around.
In what way?
We went to public school, but we went to shul every Shabbos. Everybody kept kosher practically. We built a sukkah. I used to shluka paris. My parents were very strong Jewish activists. They were very involved in the temple. My mother won a Mother of the Year award, and when I won mine last year, I teased. It took me 35 years, but I got mine as well. And my brothers are both very involved in their communities. I'm married. I have a wonderful son who just finished medical school and is starting his residency.
Mazal tov, that's
Thank
wonderful.
you. In fact, he will be leaving today to Israel with his wife. Another interesting story is that my son and his wife met on the Akron teen tours when they were 15 and 16 together, and they went through high schools and colleges and professional schools together, and the graduation present is the trip to Israel for Shavuos.
Oh, that is a gorgeous story. What were your parents' names?
Muriel and Leonard Tannenbaum.
Muriel and Leonard Tannenbaum. And when you were growing up, did you go to since you went to public school, yes? Mm-hmm. And you were in a conservative household, did you go to some kind of Talmud Torah?
We went to regular Hebrew school, then the Hebrew high school, the 5 towns, something that probably doesn't exist today. But we also had a feeling we were involved in all kinds of organizations, like USY on Wheels we went on. I went on Masada, ZOA. Little did I realize that their teen tour years ago would play such an important part of my life today, because the one organization I am very involved with and very proud to be a part of is ZOA.
And did you have a bat mitzvah ceremony?
I had a bat mitzvah ceremony on Mother's Day, and every mother got a red rose, and the theme was Jewish women, and we had wine bottles given out that were redeemable at my wedding for champagne.
Oh, that's fabulous. At your wedding, did people show up with those bottles?
A few did, but everybody got the champagne.
Good. What's your husband's name?
Peter.
What's he do?
He's in the food business.
Is he also committed to Judaism in Israel?
Yes, he actually grew up very religious. He went to Torah Das.
Okay. So as you created your own home for your own family, was it part of the modern Orthodox community? Was it part of the Orthodox community? Was it part of the conservative community?
As I said to you, as conservative Judaism has changed,
yes,
many people in my community either went more reform or they really went the modern Orthodox route. And there are many Jewish leaders and organization leaders that came from my temple that are modern Orthodox and that send their kids to the day schools like Haftar and Ramaz and Frisch, and their kids went to Israel, and that, like the trend in Judaism, they're going more religious. For me, I felt more comfortable going more religious, and I'm very glad I did. I love Friday night, shutting the phone off and shutting that computer and knowing Saturday morning it's, you know, the first thing I don't do is grab my phone to see what did I miss on Facebook and Instagram.
So what is the synagogue you daven in?
I am very proud to say that I daven at the Chabad of the 5 towns, and my rabbi is Rabbi Wallowik, and I also had a big distinction that I was with my rabbi and David Friedman at the embassy opening.
You were actually in Jerusalem when the embassy was opened, the American embassy.
Yes, I was.
What was that like?
Surreal.
In what way?
First of all, to have all the personal ties that I had to David and Tammy Friedman and to the rabbi who gave the welcoming, it was just a feeling like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I was so proud that I am a supporter of the president that actually kept his word and did this. I was so happy to be there with friends of mine like Congressman Lee Zeldin, who I've known since he was a freshman congressman, and with people like Ron DeSantis, because he's just been so great to Israel. And there was no other way to describe it. Also, there was a great feeling of love from the Christian Zionist movement there. There was a beautiful event the night before where David Friedman was honored by the Friends of Zion Museum. And the feeling that we aren't alone, that people understand that Israel is ours historically, religiously, emotionally, and that people want to come there and be a part of it and share with Jews. It's just the most beautiful feeling, and it's something not discussed often enough.
Mm-hmm. You know, Cindy, you are unabashed in what you support and who you support. And there are many American Jews now who are on the opposite side. First of all, the majority of American Jews hate Donald Trump. And hate may not be a strong enough word. They believe that he represents things that are antithetical to what America stands for. They don't like him in the White House. They believe he was unqualified and had no business being elected. And most of all, they believe he has adopted patterns and said things which an American leader, and certainly an American president, but an American leader, just shouldn't be saying, and that there's a certain kind of crudity to him and a kind of disrespect for people. And so as a result, in the Jewish community, he is vilified. Now you come along and you feel very supportive of Donald Trump. You're familiar with people. Look, you work in the Trump organization, not in the formal political Trump organization, but in
grassroots.
Yes, and you know these people. Now we know you're a lifelong friend of David Friedman. But when you hear this kind of criticism, what is it that you feel you wish people knew? Or how do you answer the fact that in the Jewish world, you're in a very small minority?
I have been since Cleveland, when I was interviewed by 5 Jewish publications and media outlets, fighting the thing, why is anti-Semitism tied to Donald Trump? Or, he's not a friend to the Jews, or his family was anti-Semitic. And I say 2 sentences. Actions speak louder than words. And he and his administration and the people around him have been so pro-Israel. Even the fact that our ambassador to Germany, who's not Jewish, made such a big production out of the fact that Jews and non-Jews and everybody in Germany should wear kippah, when people in the German government said that Jews should not wear the kippah. It's such a strong statement to the friendships and respect of President Trump. The second thing I'd say to them is, thank God that we don't have Hillary Clinton there. We're going to be finding out a lot before 2020 that now will first come out about all the secret meetings and ties. I find a lot of Jews very hypocritical. I'll give you a perfect example. People in unions who their TDAs and their retirement systems are making more money because of the economy and the stock market with Donald Trump. They love that. They all say it. They're doing great. They're making more money now than they did in the 8 years of an Obama administration. But they don't like Donald Trump. A lot of people are also jealous of the fact that this man has been able to reinvent himself over and over and over again, whether or not it was real estate or his personal life or The Apprentice. Or he didn't have to go through the process of going through runs in Congress and in government or becoming a governor. He went straight to the top. People like Chuck Schumer and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, all these people went, whether or not they were Democrat or Republican, before he was a candidate, went to him for money and wanted him at fundraisers and knew his name had a lot of clout. So I really think that the Jewish community overall should take a look at what mainstream America is seeing when they go into the farmlands, when they go at the rallies, when they see what's happening. Even people who are Democrats are starting to say they don't know who's going to be able to beat him in 2020.
Okay, so first of all, I don't have a Democrat here to debate with you. Mm-hmm. So in some sense, this is not about that type of discussion. I do want to know whether you understand what it is that troubles American Jews about Donald Trump and the things he said and the things that, and in some way the way he conducts himself. Do you understand what bothers
Yes, I do.
American Jews?
Yes. First of all, I have it within my own family. It's the history of Jews being the Roosevelt and Kennedy Democrats, and they just can't give up that feeling that the Democratic Party has changed. And then the second thing is they take the, I don't want to say fake news, but some of the inaccuracies, the same way Israel's being portrayed in the media inaccurately, so is our president. When he said there were some good people, there are some bad people, that's a general statement, and that was only a little piece of it. I agree. In every situation, there is good and bad. And I have been very outspoken and very publicly speaking about the alt-right hate.
Yes, by the way, you're very vocal in criticizing the alt-right, yes?
Yes. And I know that they are not part of the inner circles within the Trump organization. I know that if you speak with them, because I have, the people that I know that are anti-Semitic, vile and racist, they don't even understand or know his policies. So someone just yells, Trump, 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 and they don't know anything else because they think it's, the right thing to do to get 15 minutes of fame. That's not our president. This is somebody that I learned from David Friedman the night before the election in 2016 at a Parler meeting. Donald Trump is a very loyal person, and he will listen if you listen to him and respect him. And he has seen loyalty from these people, and he will show it to them back. That's why so many of the promises he made during his campaign in 2016, he is keeping, because he does listen, whether or not it's veterans. I mean, I do a lot of work in the minority communities, part of the Diversity Coalition, and they are actually seeing progress because they are working together with the Trump administration.
It saddens me that Donald Trump has become a wedge issue in the Jewish community, so that very often Jews won't talk to each other, and
I have that experience.
they don't trust each other.
Okay.
They vilify each other, even inside families. People aren't talking if somebody thinks that in some way they're pleased with the policies that Trump has initiated, and those who think that Trump is just hideous. It's interesting. Those who hate him tend to hate him because they think he's a hideous person.
Correct. And
many who like him because they say something like, we understand who he is, we understand he's not a traditional politician, you do like his tweeting, you don't like his tweeting, does he say dumb things? By the way, many presidents have said dumb things. But we like the policy. So people who like him tend to like the policy. People who hate him, they don't even want to know what the policy is. I've heard people say to me, I'm very glad that the United States recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, but not if Trump does it. If Trump does it, it's no good. It doesn't matter that the content is right. If Trump says, we will no longer pay for slay in the Palestinian world, where the Palestinians were literally funding people who murdered Israelis. Mm-hmm. And Trump said, we're not going to do that anymore. That should be applauded on both sides of the aisle. But because Trump did it for many American Jews, it's not that he gets no credit, it means nothing. Anyway, what saddens me is the extent to which the Jewish community, which has traditionally been a very thoughtful community, even if it's been partisan, it's been thoughtful and honest. Thoughtfulness goes out the window, and honesty, what you called hypocrisy, out the window. Honesty goes out the window because there is this visceral, emotional inability to view Trump as a human being.
Okay. So I'm going to say something to you, Mark, and you're a rabbi, so you could relate to it. Don't you find this in other areas of Judaism itself? Let's look at the Orthodox fighting one another and the conservative fighting one another and the Reform. We are a group that likes to fight, and we have to have a lot of debate.
I disagree with you. Boy, do Jews like to fight? Yes. Is there this notion that every Jew gets along with every other Jew? No. And institutionally, do Jews have arguments? Yes. But you and I know, and I can name them for you, Reform rabbis who put their arms around Orthodox rabbis and Orthodox rabbis who put their arms around Reform rabbis. Institutional leaders may see things differently, but they respect one another. The differences don't normally go to the extent of a visceral hatred. Trump is a unique phenomenon even in the Jewish world, that Jews can, yes, argue, and American Jews and many secular Jews in Israel right now are very angry at Haredi Judaism in Israel. Mm-hmm. And they feel that Haredi Judaism is making serious mistakes in terms of social policy, the issue over the draft, the issue over working, the question of whether Jewish pluralism will ever be accepted in Israel the way it is in America. But they don't hate each other. And all you can show me is, yeah, by the way, when it comes to Trump, they hate each other. Yes, when it comes to Trump, Jews hate. I find that a tragic Jewish reality.
And yet they saw how the rabbi from the Chabad embraced him, and they saw how he went to Pittsburgh and he tried to do the respectful thing. And I know he has kosher parties and lots of mezuzahs around that White House, because there are lots of people that are Jewish working there every single day. So I can't answer that for you. I don't know the answer. But do I have a feeling more Jews are going to support him than there were before? I think they're going to support him, not about Israel, but I'll give you an example in New York. People are really, really upset with what's happening in Albany and what's happening in City Hall, and people are leaving New York like crazy.
In what sense are they upset?
The policies here, our economy.
Give me an example.
Okay, since education is something I know very well about,
Yes.
I'm very glad right now that it's coming out, all the racism and the discrimination in the hiring, because this is something I've been familiar with for over a decade. And I know that many people knew about it and kept it very quietly, including many Jewish staff people.
And what was the racism?
There are hiring practices that are not fair.
In what way?
Schools that want to hire minorities because they have minority students, they're not hiring for merit, they're hiring because of the color of their skin. And they have evaluations that are not fair, so that you can easily discriminate against somebody you don't like.
But are you saying that in the public school system of New York State, people of color are not being hired?
No, they are being hired. It's the Jews and the whites that are being discriminated against.
So when you use the word racism, it's something called reverse racism.
I'm sorry, yes.
Yes. It's not that the schools are racist. You talk to people who are upset that, in fact, the school system is making a conscious effort to hire people of color and minorities.
Correct.
Okay. And you feel what about that?
I think it's terrible. I think that it hurts the school system itself, because you should be hiring people based on their qualifications to teach and to get success rates out of their students, not by the color of their skin. And there have been a lot of cover-ups regarding the discipline and safety, test scores, evaluations of all staff, special education needs, which goes into federal and state laws being broken. So, yes, there are these kind of policies, and it's affecting a lot of people. You see, in that situation, Jews aren't speaking up enough. It's the Asian community that's speaking up, because they're affected. We should be involved in that more. We talk a lot, but we don't do a lot of the pro-action the way we should be in those kind of situations.
Why do you think that is?
Jews feel that they have to help everybody before they help themselves. I find that in everything. I'll give you a great example. Women's International Day I went to a celebrity event that was run by a Jewish celebrity, a Holocaust survivor. They were busy supporting every nationality, every kind of background. They had a minister there, they had all kinds of leaderships from all other religions. You would think they would say something about the Jewish religion. And if you want to have a full discussion and a fairness, you have to include yourself. You have to have some pride. And don't say it doesn't matter, we've gone through this already. We're learning now. There's a whole generation that doesn't really know or believe the Holocaust ever existed.
Mm-hmm. And I want to just push you a little bit more. Why do you think it is that you would go to a conference or a meeting and that Jews would talk about everybody else but not about themselves? Why? What's going on among American Jews that happens?
I don't really know if it's just an American Jewish feeling, because if you ask people who are historians and discuss what went on in Europe pre-Holocaust, they said it was the same thing in Germany there. Jews were able to build themselves up into a society, financially, publicly, have positions, status, and they wanted to keep that. As somebody said, you know, it's easier for a Jew to go into a group with Aryans than it would be for a Hispanic or a black, or not to put them down, but that's the reality of it. We could escape it easier. We could dye hair, we could get nose jobs, we could do whatever we want and kind of get away with it where others can't. So we feel wherever we go, the wandering Jew throughout our history, we have to be able to fit in. But part of that fitting in should be being proud Jews. Mm-hmm. And not enough of us are.
I think, by the way, I think you're right. At the same time, I want to say this to you. I grew up a typical, traditional, liberal Jew. And my first hero was Jackie Robinson. He was my hero before I found out he was black, African American. Then I do find out he's African American. And I remember how it seemed to me that the African American struggle in America was very much like the struggle that the Jew had also to be emancipated and to be free and to be accepted as part of society. And when the Jewish community was in the forefront of the civil rights movement, it made me very proud. And I still am proud of, you know, Abraham Joshua Heschel and all the American Jewish kids, you know, Goodman and Schwerner, and all the American rabbis and just Americans in general who got on buses and went down to Selma or were part of marches and were in Montgomery, and they sometimes were beaten up, and when it came to Schwerner and Goodman, along with Cheney, they were murdered. But I was proud that that was the Jewish notion, and I understood that ultimately a series of generations of African Americans had been enslaved, and that in some way they needed to have a leg up, or it would be impossible for them as a community, as a people, to ever enjoy what America is the way white Americans do. And it seems to me that although I believe it is worlds better today than it was in the 40s and before, when there were lynchings in the South and when there were colored water fountains in the South, it's worlds better. At the same time, I don't think anybody would argue that it's better to be a white in America than a person of color in America. And so to the extent to which that remains true, while I, as a very proud, vocal American Jew, who believes that American Jews must first and foremost care about the Jewish family that we are part of, and Jews are a family all over the world, and our major centers are now in Israel and America. We have a bond to Israel. We have a bond to the Israeli because he's a Jew. At the same time, I don't want the American Jewish community ever to become callous or unfeeling for the place of the minority and the other. And therefore, while I don't want the Jew to go into a room and only care about the non-Jew, I don't want the Jew to go into a room and not care about the non-Jew.
I agree with you 100%. In fact, I am putting together something right now that no one even knows about, but it has to do with the rebuilding of the Black-Jewish relationship, because I think it's very important, especially what's going on every day with all the hate crimes just in New York alone, and because the average Black person who I work with or I know is embarrassed by it and doesn't feel that way. I mean, you talk about memories. I mean, I grew up wanting to be Diana Ross. I mean, I still remember when she sang the song from Mahogany on the Academy Awards. I stayed up for that. So I understand that, but I also think that we have to do it all together. We can't, we could have our pride. There's nothing wrong with me being a proud Jew and being a proud Zionist and working together with my friends, whether or not it's the Black community, Hispanics, because Hispanics are going to be taking over the population as the leading minority by the year 2024 over the Blacks, whether or not it's Asian American or whether or not it's any other minority. Also, we live in a world because of intermarriage, especially from the 60s, and so many Jews and Blacks merge, and Ethiopian Jews. I always say to people, how do you think an Ethiopian Jew feels? They're Black and they're Jewish. They have both things against them. We cannot discriminate, but by the same token, we must be proud of where we came from and who we are and where we're going. And people don't want to do the third step of where we're going.
Okay, and I believe when you say it that way, you say it beautifully, and it's a balance. And I don't want anybody to think that you only care about Jews. At the same time, what you're saying, and I say it all the time, I worry that American Jewry does not care about American Jewish issues or Jewish issues to the extent to which they should. And they certainly don't care for Israel the way I wish they would. And I think that they're in much of the liberal, left-leaning American Jewish community, there is an antipathy to Israel. There's an antipathy to Netanyahu, and now it's compounded because they don't like the fact that he and Trump are so close. And I often feel that the criticism of Israel I hear from within the Jewish community is, it's silly. And it's certainly non-productive.
Well, you talk about education. Scientists have found that people's minds are made up by the second grade and everything else grows. And people think by the time kids get to colleges that, oh my God, that's where it starts. No, the hate, the bias, the failure of teaching accurate history, the fuzzy math, from kindergarten to second grade, they get plenty. I mean, I've been given handouts about, we talk about anti-Semitism in classrooms. They reteach history so that Malcolm X is a hero. Well, to many African Americans, Malcolm X is not a hero. They teach that, I have a handout that says Blacks came from Africa for compensation. That's not true. And it's a coloring sheet. During Black History Month, somebody gave out a handout about the Pharaoh being such a leader of the Black people in Egypt. And I said something that, that's not actually accurate, because he also was somebody who was the master of slaves. Mm-hmm. So a big part of the problem when I say I fight for education, and when you talk about teachers being best qualified and getting the right skills, there's also this indoctrination that they're getting from their unions, from where they're being taught, from the globalist Common Core curriculum. And we really have a lot to do on this, not just as Jews, but as human beings, because we are actually going to hurt all of us, not just Jews, if we don't start to get a hold of this.
So I know you're very concerned about anti-Semitism. You've done work in this area. And we've talked about this even off camera. I want you to describe where you think anti-Semitism is coming from. And the reason I want you to talk about it is you're very eloquent about how you're upset with it from both the left and the right. Describe that for me.
Okay, well, I think the left, this is something that a lot of Jewish leaders have been debating with me. We don't have to fight anti-Semitism on the right because there's so much on the left. On the left, it's very obvious with the 3 freshman congresswomen, with the daily attacks, and even though Jewish organizations send out press releases and have press conferences with rabbis and with Orthodox Jewish leaders, but the truth of the matter is, talk is cheap. Where is the actual action where they're actually doing something to prevent it, other than saying, we'll get maybe more security? I know most places like shuls and yeshivas are hiring private security. So I think that we have to look at where it's stemming from a central part. And a lot of it's starting from the young education system.
Anti-Semitism is?
Yes.
In what? How?
Not just anti-Semitism, but inaccurate facts in our classrooms.
Okay. I want to know for you, where is anti-Semitism on the right?
Okay, it is on Gab website. The Gab website is, quote unquote, the free speech website, where there is a load of anti-Semitism, anti-Israel, where a lot of these shooters, it's coming out, are able to get their popularity and fame and ideas to take it the next step to get involved in tragic events.
So you're saying there are right-wing
websites
which promote anti-Semitism.
Correct.
And what they're saying is Jews are responsible for the ills of the world. It's the protocols of Zion all over again.
Well, that's some of it. And then they make fun. There's pictures. Everybody now knows how to use Instagram and make up selfies and all kinds of pictures mocking the bris or other Jewish rituals.
Okay, is this website the only place in the right-wing world?
No, I've seen it on certain Facebook pages and Twitter and Instagram. There was a website where somebody who claims he's Jewish was busy talking about lynching Antifa members. To me, that is just as disgusting as Antifa going against Jews. That's something I'm against. Because I find if somebody hates, one day it's the Jews, the next day it's the blacks, then it's a disabled person, then it's your pet, then it's, it all comes around.
And then it's your pet.
Well,
is the anti-Semitism on the right that you locate in a number of websites, are there groups in America, white supremacist groups, that you feel are legitimate threats to the Jewish community here in America?
Well, the Gothamist, and
I don't know who that is.
It's a website, and it's a media outlet.
I want to know if there's a group. Are there people I have
the
to
Proud
worry
Boys. They're being published a lot as being having members and having some anti-Semitism within that group. There are 3 minor Republican groups that I know of in Queens, New York, that are big supporters of the Lyndon LaRoche PAC and the Schiller Institute, and are spreading those ideas from the Schiller Institute and the Holocaust denial. As we all know, Lyndon LaRoche supported in the denial of a Zionist state. So I've been fighting with that. Now, that is not the accurate statements from the president, nor the GOP state and county leadership. These are rogue groups that are coming up. I mean, you can make your own group up. I can call myself, the Cindy Party on Facebook. I'm a Trump Chinese food eating group because I love to eat Chinese food. And then you get a whole group together. And all of a sudden people come in and they share your post and you become an important. And then you want to make a parlor meeting and you all share that together. And I'm just using that as a fun thing.
Yes.
Nothing against Chinese food.
I understand. Are you, as a Jew, as an American Jew, are you frightened of anti-Semitism from the right?
Yes, because I've been physically followed by people who are part of these groups, and I've been threatened.
You're a very high-profile person in your community. You think your son would say the same thing? Would it surprise you that I say to you, I have not been in any way threatened by any anti-Semitism from the right or the left? I've been upset by anti-Semitism that I see in the corners of the far left of the Democratic Party. I am not frightened by any systemic anti-Semitism in America. I don't believe America or Americans are in any way seriously anti-Semitic. Do you think I'm wrong?
I think a little bit, yes.
How am I wrong?
Because I just gave you a great example of not knowing the name of the Pittsburgh shooter, and yet many people know that he was using this website and spurring this anti-Semitism regularly, and people were complaining about it. So maybe it's not as much, but the Democratic Party didn't start this hate in 2016. It kept crawling up little by little. And people who say to me, you have to look at just at the president, wrong. A lot of things you have to start to look at are the people on your school boards who have local power, who decide the textbooks that your schools use. You have to go look at your assemblymen and your state senators. We have so many people that are coming out anti-Israel in Albany, and it's accepted. I mean, we have Linda Sarsour close to our public advocate. We have Charles Barron, a noted anti-Semite, sitting in Albany, a leader among the Democrats, embraced by the Jewish elected officials up there. And I saw that with my own eyes. I see how they treat him. So you have to know who you are voting for locally and where they stand. Mm-hmm. I mean, Washington is just the last step sort of on the ladder, the top step on that ladder. But too many people, and I know it's time consuming, and we all have busy lives, but you pay taxes. You have a right to say whatever you want as long as you're paying a tax and you're a legal citizen.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just push, again, one more time on this. Mm-hmm. When I look at the shootings that I've seen in the last, 10 to 20 years, and there were shootings before in Jewish institutions, in a federation, Jewish center, mm-hmm. in a Jewish senior citizens community. It was a long time ago, but the two shootings we refer to now are not the only shootings. But I've seen shootings of gay bars. I've seen shootings of black churches. I've seen shootings in schools. I've seen shootings at in Las Vegas. It was at a concert. Mm-hmm. So for me, I believe it says something more about the degree of mental illness and the violent character of American society more than I fear this is anti-Semitism, unless what you're saying is anti-Semitism and anti-gay are about equal, and anytime we see anybody shoot up an institution, it represents a larger issue which all the people of that institution should begin to fear. So don't get me wrong, it was horrible what happened in Pittsburgh, horrible what happened in Poway, and our hearts go out, and we made a big point of that here on JBS. Our hearts go out to individuals who were the victims. But I don't see that as America coming after Jews.
Based on the media research that's been coming out, the anti-Semitic acts are much more than any other hate.
That's always been true.
So,
That's always
but it's rising
been
more
true.
and more.
And it's only, and by the way, relatively speaking, and our audience should understand this, there is no more anti-Semitism today than there was 10 years ago. There was a dip in anti-Semitism, but the anti-Semitic incidents today are still less than they were under George Bush. Less. But that's not the way it's portrayed. Also, Cindy, it depends how you define an anti-Semitic act. An anti-Semitic is, every anti-Semitic act is upsetting. But what really bothers me is anti-Semitism that is A, systemic, B, that is somehow sanctioned by society, either formally or informally, or worst of all, what we saw in Nazi Germany, when anti-Semitism becomes institutionalized through government. None of that is true in America. Would you agree with me on that?
Based on what I was told of pre-Holocaust times in Europe, there are a lot of similarities from today. I can't say it.
Name one. Not one. But wait, Nazi Germany came after a hideous defeat in World War I and an economy that was devastated. It was created on the backs of generations of anti-Semitism. Not only at virulent anti-Semitism, the entire Western European civilization is built on a certain kind of anti-Semitic basis. And then what happened was there were groups who became sanctioned by the government, first by political parties and then by the government. The government was not a democracy. It was not a three-branch system like we have here. Hitler was not elected by the Israeli people. He was appointed by a chancellor. There is no similarity between what happened in Germany and what we have here in America. And although I am it's not just sympathetic, I respect the work you're doing. And I respect the work you're doing in terms of bipartisanship, in terms of education, which is marvelous, and in the way you're trying to build bridges. It is spectacular. And that's why I wanted you at this table. But I don't agree with you that Americans or you or your husband or your son have to worry about anti-Semitism in the street. You do have to worry, in my view, about anti-Semitism within a political party which would have been unthinkable 10 years ago.
I agree with you to a point. Maybe it's not exactly the same, but if we don't start to take some steps to be more aware and more educated, it will creep up on us both places. I'm not saying the Republican Party has anything near what we see up front with the 3 Democrats or the 20 potential nominees for 2020 coming up there are 20 congressional candidates that are Muslim, anti-Israel, coming up in 2020, from what I have heard. So I'm not saying that's happening in the Republican Party. But if we're going to just lay back, go to the Hamptons this summer, enjoy Shavuos cheesecake and not think about it. I go to Chabad. While we discussed over Pesach what happened in California, there was a Chabad attack in Kenya. I mean, people that are being attacked on the streets in Brooklyn are the ones that look Hasidic. So for us, it is a little bit of a different situation because wearing a yarmulke is an issue. Or, walking with a crowd walking on Shabbos to and from shul, it's very obvious what we're doing.
Where is there some place you're afraid for your son to wear a yarmulke in New York?
I know that I have been told, Cindy, you should not be wearing Jewish stars and things like this in the subways.
That's crazy. Cindy, that is lunacy.
I do wear it, though, so it doesn't...
And nothing's ever happened to you, had there?
No, and I hope it doesn't.
And your son can wear and your husband can wear a yarmulke anywhere in New York they want, anywhere in America. This
But
is
that-
not France.
Right. But this doesn't mean we should not be aware, so
I
that
agree.
we don't
I
become a
agree.
France. And that's maybe the point I'm trying to make. We have to start now if we haven't started, and if we have started from the beginning, take the next steps to be careful, because it can creep. You know, Donald Trump is not going to be in office forever, and we don't know who's coming in the Republican Party after him. We're lucky we have him now that he's been so pro-Israel, but we don't know what happens. We didn't know when our grandparents were such big supporters of FDR, they didn't know that behind the scenes, he knew stuff that could have saved thousands of Jews. And the same thing with Kennedy. Look what came out about Joseph Kennedy and what he knew about the Holocaust and the trains and that they didn't know. Knowledge is power, whether or not it's anti-Semitism, whether or not it's racism, whether or not it's health issues. Knowledge is power, even religious issues. I mean, I think part of the problem with anti-Semitism that we're also easy targets is because so many of us are so assimilated and don't really know so much about Judaism, its history, or practices. I mean, the most practiced Jewish tradition is Hanukkah. And that's not really a religious holiday, that's a celebration.
So we've talked about some of the problems that we both see. What gives you the most hope and you get the most kick out of when you look at Jewish life today? On the flip side of all the problems that we deal with, and I think you've articulated many of them so beautifully, at the same time, what is it, Cindy, that gives you the most joy about Jewish life today?
I was at the Young Leadership of Yad Vashem luncheon last week, and I love that organization because it's a lot of people in their 20s who are very involved in trying to share their family's experiences as Holocaust survivors, second and third generation, and they have an interest. The Holocaust always was something that was able to get people wanting to think about their Judaism. It doesn't have any connection to a religious affiliation. It doesn't even have to be located in one place. The fact that I was able to sit next to a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor who told his story, and his grandchildren at the same table who are active, who are working with this organization, is really amazing to me. I love the fact that I am able to not only talk about politics with Judaism, but I do a lot of fashion work. I do a lot of work in food blogging and recipes and restaurants. And what I like to do is, I don't like to keep it just kosher-oriented or parv-oriented. Today there is a whole area because of the trends with keto and vegan and organic. There's a whole industry out there for Jews and for non-Jews to enjoy our products. And that's a great way our cultures can mix and blend beautifully. When I go to fashion, I'm not limited to just sneas or modest fashion. Most of the people I work with aren't even Jewish. I'm their only Jewish connection. But I go to the shows and I can find things that the more religious could wear and the non-religious can wear. And I'm also learning about different parts of the world, and when we discuss different parts of the world, we find we have similarities of course, where there's a Chabad around the world. If they're a Far Eastern designer, if there's a Chabad around there, or they know things. People do have ideas about what Jews are. So because of travel, and because Israel exists, and because Israel is such an important leader in the world, helping everybody, whether or not it's water irrigation in Africa, or trade with China, and of course the United States, and everything in South America, always being the first country to help and aid when there is a natural disaster. That's something that's really great and positive, and I like that. I mean, when you say being Jewish, I don't want to look at it as Orthodox, Reform, Conservative, because there is so much more to being Jewish than just what you partake in as a, spiritual or religious wise. There is a feeling of wanting to be Jewish. A lot of people don't have that feeling, but there is a whole generation growing. And another thing I find fascinating, so many of the kids that are grandchildren of Holocaust survivors that lost almost entire families. Well, there's now 6 and 7 and 8 children with 20 grandchildren and 50 great-grandchildren. And thank God all those people are being named after so that they are not forgotten. So those are some of the beautiful things I like to do and work with.
You are a whirlwind, a wonderful whirlwind in this crazy Jewish world of ours. Kol tuva hatzlacha, you are from strength to strength. It's an honor to meet you. I think what you're doing, and it doesn't matter whether people who are watching agree with everything you say or not. What's important is they understand how passionate you are ultimately about doing good for the Jewish people and for the greater world as a whole. I'm proud of you, and I'm glad you're here on JBS. Thank you. We have only scratched the surface, so you have to promise to come back.
I promise I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cindy Grosz, columnist, author, educator, pro-Israel activist. She's making a marvelous contribution to Jewish life. I hope you enjoyed meeting her here on L'Chaim. As always, I invite you to be in touch with me with any thoughts or comments you may have to any of the ideas expressed on this edition of L'Chaim. Please email me, write me, post on our Facebook page, or tweet me. I look forward to hearing from many of you. And remember, you can now take L'Chaim with you as a podcast. Go to iTunes, Google Play, wherever you download your podcasts. Listen to L'Chaim wherever you are. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. L'Chaim, my friends, life.
L'Chaim is a presentation of Jewish education in media.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support JBS with a tax-deductible gift of $36, double chai or more. Simply visit the JBS website at jbstv.org and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check to JBS, P.O. Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.